Good evening and welcome. Tonight we take a hard look at the human cost of conflict in our world. 2024 has been a year marked by violence, a year where old wounds festered and new battles erupted. From the eastern plains of Europe to the arid Sahel region of Africa, the year has been a grim reminder of the fragility of peace. We're going to journey to the heart of 5 of the world's bloodiest conflicts. These aren't just headlines, they are humanitarian crises unfolding in real time, impacting the lives of millions. We'll examine the root causes, the key players, and the devastating consequences of these wars. Most importantly, we will hear the stories of those caught in the crossfire, families torn apart, innocent lives lost, and the enduring spirit of those fighting for survival and ultimately for peace. These are their stories. Welcome to our deep dive into the 5 bloodiest conflicts of 2024. These wars have caused immense suffering and loss of life across various regions of the world.
For the people of Ukraine, 2024 has been a year of relentless bombardment, of fierce resistance and unimaginable loss. The conflict, ignited by the Russian invasion in the previous year, has morphed into a grinding war of attrition. Cities lie in ruins, scarred by missile strikes and artillery fire. Millions have fled their homes, seeking refuge in neighboring countries or in whatever shelter they can find within Ukraine's borders. We've been on the ground in Ukraine throughout the year, witnessing firsthand the resilience of the Ukrainian people. We've spoken to soldiers on the front lines, their faces etched with exhaustion and determination. We've met families huddled in subway stations, seeking safety from the bombs raining down above. The stories are heartbreaking. Mothers grieving for lost sons and daughters. Children forced to grow up too fast in the shadow of war. The elderly, their golden years shattered by violence and displacement. And yet, even amidst the rubble and despair, there are glimmers of hope. Volunteers risking their lives to deliver aid. Doctors and nurses working tirelessly to save the wounded. Ordinary Ukrainians demonstrating extraordinary courage in the face of unimaginable adversity. The war in Ukraine is far from over. But one thing is clear, the spirit of the Ukrainian people remains unbroken.
Sudan, a nation already grappling with poverty and political instability, plunged deeper into chaos this year. A power struggle between rival military factions ignited a civil war, plunging the nation into darkness. The fighting has been brutal, marked by indiscriminate shelling and ethnically targeted violence. The capital city of Khartoum has become a ghost town, its streets deserted save for heavily armed militias and desperate civilians fleeing the crossfire. The humanitarian crisis is catastrophic. Hospitals have been bombed, leaving the sick and wounded with nowhere to turn. Food and water are scarce, and aid agencies struggle to reach those in need. The conflict has also reignited old ethnic tensions, particularly in the Darfur region, where memories of past atrocities are still fresh. We traveled to a refugee camp on the border of Chad, where thousands of Sudanese have sought refuge. We spoke to families who had lost everything, their homes, their livelihoods, and often their loved ones. We listened to mothers recount harrowing tales of escape, carrying their children for miles through dangerous territory. The situation in Sudan is a stark reminder of the human cost of political ambition and the devastating consequences of failed states. The international community must act decisively to end the violence, hold those responsible accountable, and provide urgent humanitarian assistance to the millions in need.
Myanmar's long and troubled history took another dark turn in 2024. The military junta, which seized power in a coup 2 years ago, continues to tighten its grip on the country, crushing dissent and committing atrocities against its own people. We've seen chilling footage smuggled out of Myanmar villages razed to the ground, mass graves discovered in remote areas, and protesters gunned down in the streets. The military junta has shown a blatant disregard for human rights, targeting anyone perceived as opposition, including journalists, activists, and even aid workers. We spoke to a young woman who had been forced to flee to neighboring Thailand after her brother, a student activist, was arrested and disappeared. She hasn't heard from him since and fears the worst. The international community has largely been powerless to stop the violence. Sanctions have had little impact, and the junta has shown no willingness to engage in meaningful dialogue. The people of Myanmar are trapped in a nightmare. Their voices silenced, their future uncertain. But even in the darkest of times, their spirit of resistance flickers on.
The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a seemingly intractable conflict that has defined the region for decades, flared up again this year with devastating consequences. A series of rocket attacks and airstrikes left a trail of death and destruction in both Gaza and Israel. We were there as sirens wailed in Tel Aviv, sending residents scrambling for bomb shelters. We saw the aftermath of rocket attacks in Israeli towns. The twisted metal and shattered glass a testament to the terror inflicted. And in Gaza, we witnessed the devastating impact of Israeli airstrikes. Hospitals overwhelmed with casualties, homes reduced to rubble, families grieving for loved ones lost. The cycle of violence is a tragic reminder of the deep-seated mistrust and anger that fuels this conflict. Each attack only serves to deepen the divide, making a peaceful resolution seem more distant than ever. We spoke to families on both sides of the conflict, united in their grief, but divided by narratives of pain and victimhood that have been passed down through generations. The only path to peace lies in breaking this cycle of violence. It will require courageous leadership, a willingness to compromise, and a recognition that true security can only be achieved through mutual understanding and respect.
In the vast and unforgiving Sahel region of Africa, a perfect storm of challenges has created a breeding ground for extremism and instability. Poverty, climate change, and weak governance have fueled a surge in jihadist insurgencies, plunging the region into a humanitarian crisis. From Mali to Niger to Burkina Faso, armed groups have sown chaos, attacking civilians, displacing communities, and undermining already fragile states. We traveled to Burkina Faso, where the security situation has deteriorated dramatically. We met families who had been forced to flee their homes after jihadists attacked their villages, killing and looting. We saw firsthand the impact of the violence: schools closed, health centers abandoned, and fields left untended as fear stalked the land. The humanitarian needs are immense. Millions are facing hunger and displacement, and aid agencies are struggling to operate in such a volatile environment. The crisis in the Sahel is a stark reminder that the world's problems are interconnected. Climate change, poverty, and conflict are not isolated challenges, but rather interconnected threats that require a coordinated global response.
As we've seen tonight, 2024 has been a year of immense suffering for millions caught in the crossfire of conflict. These aren't just statistics, they're human beings, mothers, fathers, children, whose lives have been shattered by violence. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of these crises, to feel powerless in the face of such immense suffering, but we must never lose sight of our shared humanity, of the responsibility we all have to raise our voices against injustice and to demand better for our world. Stay informed, stay engaged, and never lose hope. Because even in the darkest of times, it's important to remember that peace is always possible, and it's a goal worth fighting for. These conflicts have left deep scars on the affected regions and their people. Stay informed and join us in hoping for peace and resolution in these troubled areas. Thank you for watching.